Lera never suffered from a deficiency in her childhood. She heard this mysterious word from adults more than once, but did not understand what they were talking about. They always had food at home. Sometimes something unusual fell, like bananas or 3-liter rolled-up cans of red caviar. Parents forced their daughter to eat this muck, and when she complained to friends for injustice, they looked at her like she was an alien. No one knew what it looked like, and even more so what it tasted like caviar. The girl wondered why the rest of the children were so sloppily dressed. Eternally stretched on the knees pants, going to the accordion and tights, the same dress and the same flower, all this disgusted Lera. Her wardrobe was strikingly different. Dad brought beautiful fabric from somewhere, and Mom sewed beautiful things that stood out from the crowd. In summer, the girl rested for a long time on the sea coast, swam in the sea, breathed fresh mountain air. The rest of the children stayed in the city. All summer they were busy in the dust and in the yard and did not even dream of going on vacation. Lera dreamed of not going anywhere at least once and staying with them. But my parents strictly stated that I needed to improve my health. Everyone was talking about their family behind their backs. They envied the high position of his father, who managed to knock out scarce things and products for the family. They scoffed at the beauty of the mother, who did not work, and devoted all her time to Lera with her little brother. The life of the girl was stable and happy. Until tragedy struck. That night, everyone was awakened by a phone call. Brother began to cry, mother ran to him, Lera clung to her family, listening to her father's voice hoarse from sleep. He threw something into the receiver, and then appeared on the threshold of the nursery. The girl will forever remember his white as chalk face and eyes mad with fear. The reactor exploded. You need to leave here immediately. Father's words reached the family, as if through water. Mother rushed to collect things and documents. Father called somewhere for a second, without leaving the phone. And little Lera hugged her crying brother and did not understand that she was sitting on her bed for the last time. Dad's driver arrived soon after. He usually drove the leadership of the ruling party to important meetings. Right now, his wife and son, frightened to death, were sitting in the car. Lera with her brother and mother climbed into the same place. The father waved his hand to them and went to the apartment. He received an order in the morning to convince everyone that nothing terrible had happened to him. Lera did not remember this trip well. They were shaking in the car for several long hours, moving further and further away from home. The driver brought them to his parents in a village on the seashore. The man left everyone in his elderly mother's yard and drove back to work. They, complete strangers, were welcomed cordially. But my mother still burst into tears, and Lera still stood and looked at her relatives. The whole horror of the situation slowly began to dawn on her. Here they are alone in an unfamiliar place, the father is somewhere far away and it is not known whether he will return. From things, bags with clothes and a bag with birth certificates. The first day everything turned out to be a cruel joke. The radio and TV were silent about the incident. Women calmed the frightened children clinging to them and did not understand at all what was happening. There was no contact with the husbands. When 2 days later they started talking about the accident on TV, it became clear that the husbands might never return. However, they soon appeared, becoming haggard with dull looks and strange symptoms. Lera's family moved to the nearest town. There, the father was given a minor position and was diagnosed with radiation sickness. The attraction promised to be long. There was not enough money for life. Only now Lera realized how they used to chic. Now she didn't have to choose what to wear. It was necessary to save one single dress, pull up constantly slipping tights and pray that the leg did not grow out of the only shoes. Mom got a job, first as a janitor, then as a cleaner in a large grocery store. His shelves were almost always empty, but the dust had to be wiped off. Then the family dragged out the pleasure for a long time, cutting off a miniature piece of sausage. Life became hard, but the parents were spinning like squirrels. Gradually, the father began to be promoted, his treatment gave positive results. Mom got a job at a food warehouse. The family stopped starving. But then the Swan Lake Ballet turned on TV for a continuous repeat. Lera was finishing school at that time. Before her were good prospects to enter the capital's university, but they were all trampled on point shoes. The sounds of the dance of Little Swan's life again made a major turn, leaving millions of people confused. Everything around was changing rapidly. Many did not keep up with the rhythm, remaining overboard of the new state, which is rapidly rushing into the bright future. Lera saw how yesterday's successful party members drink themselves and ossify on benches in parks, but there were others who quickly picked up the wave and now owned large enterprises. The father did not fall into any category to cut off a fatter piece and did not give either a conscience or a lack of communication in a new place. But the man was able to stay afloat. He knocked out the premises of the former dining room and opened a restaurant there. Mom, after working in a warehouse, helped with bookkeeping and went to work for her father. The institution was famous for its good cuisine and attracted the elite of the New World. Lera went to study in a large city. An example of parents stood before my eyes, so the girl did not sit still. She studied, actively helped teachers, earning respect for herself. In her free time, Lera wrote term papers and solved problems in higher mathematics to order. When she was finishing her studies, her parents had a grief. Their brainchild, a favorite restaurant, became the site of a showdown between two armed groups in the city. A shootout broke out in the hall. Random people left the premises in a panic. There were several victims, then a fire started. Parents were not in the restaurant at that moment, and when they arrived at the place, firefighters were already folding hoses on the ruins. Police officers rushed around, interrogating witnesses to the shooting. The family was again left without anything. Lera returned to her parents, and at the family council they decided to take a chance. With all the accumulated savings, open a small shop again. Everyone worked together. My father brought goods and negotiated with suppliers. Mother kept the documentation and reported to the tax office. Lera was behind the counter. Even my brother at that time, who was finishing school, helped in every free moment. At first it was very difficult. The empty refrigerator returned and a complete absence of pocket money. The store began to bring good money. Soon my father opened another one in the neighboring area and hired workers. Lera was finally able to take care of herself, and not a family business. She got a job in a bank, began to go to clubs. The friends behind me laughed. The old one had already missed the time when I could interest someone, but the girl did not pay attention. For the first time she seemed to breathe fresh air. Her eyes shone with happiness. This could not help but notice those around her fell in love with her and invited her on a date. And soon she found herself a faithful life partner. A modest programmer did not cause stormy delight in the opposite sex, but Lera conquered his calm disposition and soft smile. Soon they played a wedding. The couple had a wonderful daughter. While Lera was on maternity leave, she actively helped her parents in the store. I even convinced them to fly on vacation, and then reproached myself for it all my life. Parents had a great rest on the Mediterranean coast. On the way back, the plane's engine failed. Parents did not survive that catastrophe. It was a blow for Lera. She could not come to her senses for a long time, but her brother and husband shook her up and forced her to take up the parental business. Life began to seethe with renewed vigor. Lera set up the work of stores and even opened a new outlet. Her husband received an offer to work in a foreign company. Now his salary was in a currency with a solid number of zeros. Caviar appeared again in the house, which my daughter strongly disliked. My brother graduated from the university, and was able to get a profitable job and gain a foothold in the capital. Met a nice girl and planned a wedding. One day he was crossing the street to the office center where he worked. On that day, he was inattentive and terribly late. The brother did not notice the red light at the traffic light and did not have time to jump out of the way of the rushing car. At the funeral, Lera became ill, she fainted, and her frightened husband called an ambulance. When the girl came to her senses, the doctor joyfully announced that she was expecting a baby. Future parents did not have the strength to smile. Throughout the pregnancy, the woman collected herself piece by piece. The husband spun around, supporting and distracting. Soon they had a wonderful boy. Gradually life got better. For several years they lived steadily. She was even afraid to think about it, so as not to invite trouble. Lera actively plunged into the expansion of the network of stores and opened 2 more small points in remote areas. The world around was in a fever, a revolution was taking place, power was changing, but it was somewhere behind the small world in which the family lived, so the woman did not worry. Once the husband came home to the extremely thoughtful, he told about the proposal of the authorities. But Lera was suddenly frightened. She was so invested in stores that she could not even think about quitting everything. The adults asked the children's opinion. They also flatly refused to leave their friends and native places. The husband resigned, and the family stayed at home. Time went on as usual, the daughter was already graduating from university. The son went to school. Lera finally exhaled. She thought that all the bad things had already happened. She did not immediately notice that something was wrong with her husband. He was silent, not wanting to upset his wife with his poor health, and when he fell in the middle of the street, he was taken to the hospital. They discovered cancer. Lera immediately threw all the money for his treatment in an attempt to snatch the life of her beloved from the tenacious hands of a lady with a scythe. In several areas, the war began, as the daughter graduated from the university and plunged headlong into volunteering. The son entered The Economist. Inability to give up, and a fierce struggle for the life of her husband. Helped achieve remission. He continued to visit the doctor regularly, but the disease no longer progressed. Lera finally emerged into the outside world. She decided that she would enjoy every moment of her life. However, this did not last long. A full-scale war began, the son went to the front, the daughter volunteered in hot spots. Foreign troops came to their city, looted shops. Lera wanted to leave, but she saw how many elderly and disabled people were around who could not do it. I stayed to help whenever possible. A few months later, the city was liberated. Instead, heavy rocket attacks began. One of the shells destroyed their house. The woman and her husband moved into a miraculously surviving garage. It seemed that nothing could happen worse, but one night Lera woke up in the water. She looked around in a panic, not understanding what was happening, and meanwhile the water was coming. A day later, all the shops are ruins, and with them half of the city went deep underwater. Lera and her husband were evacuated to a dry area. She stood looking at the flooded streets, realizing that again she was left without anything. The woman did not know where her children were and whether they were alive at all. She was not sure that her husband's illness would not worsen from constant worries. Lera had nowhere and nothing to live for. She gave herself a couple of minutes to reflect and cry, and then decisively shook her head and collected herself. Yes, she is already under 60, but she was not going to give up. Start all over again and be happy. Lera was sure of it.